Welcome to the Bill Kelly Podcast, critical discussions in critical times. Here's your host, Bill Kelly.
And welcome to another edition of the Bill Kelly Podcast, critical discussions in these critical times. I'm your host, Bill Kelly. Well, the Canadian government is going to spend a lot more money on defense, on the military. We better get used to it, and we better do it right this time. Let's talk about that, because it's one of the commitments that Prime Minister Carney has made over the last couple of months to his NATO partners, even at the G7 meetings. National defense, international defense, and commitments to NATO are things that Canada has not always really lived up to expectations in the past. The Prime Minister has tried to rectify that and has made a pretty strong commitment. Now, I know that we're getting into tight budget times, and there's going to be a huge discussion about just where the government's going to be spending money over the next little while. And some people are, first of all, opposed to this whole idea of spending more money on defense and on the military, saying, well, that's taking away from things like the social safety net and healthcare programs and dental programs. Everything's a line item. I get that. But we have a commitment here. And I have mentioned this on previous podcasts. I think it bears repeating right now. The world is a more dangerous place right now than it was 10, 15 years ago. And Canada's got to realize that. And Canada has to understand that we have to step up. And it is not, as some people are characterizing this, a commitment to spend more money on defense to try to appease Donald Trump, because he's been ranting and raving about this for the last little while. That's white noise, okay? This is really, I think, to respond to the pleas, the urging, shall we say, although I'm sure it might be a little stronger than that, from our NATO partners, our NATO allies, that Canada needs to play a larger role here. And I think the Prime Minister has understood that and made these commitments. And it's going to cost money, but it may cost us a lot more money in the long run if we don't do these sorts of things, and could cause irreparable harm with our relationships with our other NATO partners as well. So let's talk a little bit about that, because this is not something that's in the hypothetical. It's happening, and it's happening sooner than we might expect. Stories that we've already heard circulating right now is that the government is set to announce just who is going to get the contract for new submarines. And that's a very sticky point for an awful lot of people. Canada has had a history of not getting things done quite well, properly, and we've paid a price for that. Where we get our submarines, where we get our helicopters, and oftentimes in a way to try to save money and, to try to show that we're trying to do the best thing for the taxpayers. We're buying used products from other countries, used submarines, used helicopters, previously owned, gently used, whatever you want to use. Let's say when you buy a used car, you can say all you want about it's got a 30-day guarantee, but at some point you realize it's got a lot of kilometers on it, and at some point it's going to break down. Well, our military was pretty much stuck with an awful lot of these things over the years, and it's about time that we change that around. So we're looking for new product right now, and it looks like, for instance, on the submarine issue, Germany or South Korea are going to win the contract for these submarines, and there's a substantial amount here and a lot at stake, not just how much money we're going to spend, but the economic spin-off. And yes, there can be, and there should be, an economic spin-off to this. It's not just that we put the order into whichever country this is going to be, and we sit there and wait for the delivery, and then, we go off and do our thing. We want to see this economic spin-off, and Carney has talked about this numerous times. And the two countries that are seemingly in bidding for this right now, the two finalists, as it were, Germany and South Korea, both understand that. And both have made commitments that if, in fact, they are the ones who get the contract to build these subs for Canada, there is going to be an economic spin-off here in Canada. Whether it's going to be the production here, the manufacturing here in this country, it could be any number of different things too, assembly plants, whatever the case might be, not unlike with the auto industry. And that means jobs, and God knows we need more jobs in this country right now. It could be a real boon for the steel industry, which has really been knocked on its behind because of what's happening with the U.S. tariffs. So there's a lot of positivity that can happen here economically. Not just as far as our commitment to NATO is concerned. So which country they decide on is going to go a long way towards indicating just how good this is going to be for the Canadian economy. And there is an upside to this, too. And we've seen this with other countries. There's the production of military equipment. There's the maintenance of military equipment. There's munitions. There's so many different things that are going on. If we're going to make that commitment, and I think we should, why can't we benefit economically? Why can't we produce some of that stuff here? Or at least have assembly plants here, or anything like that, to try to create jobs in this country. It only makes sense. And it's one of the things that the government is insisting upon. about which one is going to get this, and it's very important that we follow this story closely. Now, I got the story here. I've looked at a lot of stories about just how this is going to go on here, and I've got some of the specs here on submarines, and I'm not even going to get into that because that's way above everybody's head. Most of us don't understand that. We want to understand the cost. We want to understand if it's going to be beneficial, and we want to understand if there's going to be economic spinoff. Those are the three things that the majority of Canadians, are going to be looking for here right now, and that we hope the government's going to keep front center when it comes to exactly who's going to get this, and delivery, of course, as well. Now, we've talked on a previous podcast about the military material that's being produced in South Korea right now. And apparently, it's pretty good. A number of other countries have taken advantage of that. They seem to have a very quick delivery time, and apparently, it's a quality item that they're producing, whether it's submarines, tanks, whatever military material that they're putting forth there. Maybe that gives them an edge. I don't know. The Germans, on the other hand, are saying, look, we're NATO partners, and it'd be kind of nice if you kept the business here, and we'll reciprocate and make sure there's going to be some Canadian benefits to that as well. So I don't know which way it's going to go, but it's important that the government get this one right this time, because previous governments, both Liberal and Conservative, have really dropped the ball when it comes to procurement of materials for the military. And when I've talked to people that have served in the military, they're sometimes embarrassed about the equipment that they've been given and just how efficient and how effective that equipment is. So let's get that right. And yes, there's going to be a cost to it, but it's important, I think, these days, especially in light of what's going on globally with Ukraine, what's happening in different parts of the world these days, that Canada has to play a role as they have in the past. We've been slacking off for the last little while, and it's not just the Americans that have noticed this. Other NATO partners have made the same sorts of comments, and if not behind closed doors, certainly to our political leaders. And Mark Carney is paying attention to that, and I think that's a good thing. Now, there's one other element that I wanted to touch on very briefly, because while we're talking about the military procurement of here, and that's fighter jets. And again, another area where past Canadian governments have really not done very well here, looking for a bargain, kick the tires on something that's used. And again, there are a number of countries and a number of companies within those countries that are just jumping at the top here. Hey, Canada's going to spend some money. Good, it's about time. And they want the business. And that's good, because that, again, can create some economic spin-offs here in this country. And there are a couple of options here. One, of course, is Canadians dealing with the American munitions manufacturers and the people that produce aircraft down in the States. But there are others who are looking at this, too. There's Scandinavian countries, there's European countries that are producing this stuff as well. And they want to in on this. They want to partner with Canada on this, too. And that's the rub. That's why this is such a controversial piece right now, because there seemed to be a commitment, if not on paper, at least in the discussions, that, okay, we've always seemingly buy our stuff from the United States, and we'll probably just do that again. And, we're going to get new jets. Well, we'll just put the order in there. But now that there seem to be options for Canada, the U.S. is starting to speak up about this. And it's well, not to be making light of this, but I mean, it's something that could have serious repercussions. Once again, the U.S. ambassador to Canada, Pete Hoekstra, has stuck his nose into this, as he does with just about everything else these days. We've talked about Hoekstra in past podcasts. But he suggests that if Canada does not buy their fighter jets from the United States, there could be serious repercussions. Now, as a spokesperson, a mouthpiece more than likely for the Trump administration, you got to pay attention. As much as you know how I feel about Hoekstra and his rantings and ravings, but he does speak for the Trump administration. And when he starts threatening or promising that there could be ramifications, we need to pay attention to that. And, he's talking about it could harm our NATO relationships. It could be our NORAD relationships. Of course, the Northern Defenses that Canada and the U.S. have shared and partnered in for so many different years. He suggested those could be harmed. I don't know what necessarily that means. Does that mean they're going to pull out? Does that mean they're going to boot Canada out? I don't know. But the fact that they're talking about it means we need to pay attention to this. The other element, too, is Trump, of course, being the petty individual that he is. If we were to go someplace else and not buy from the United States, you got to wonder what he would do. He's already got the hammer of higher tariffs on steel, aluminum, copper, things of this nature. Could he punish Canada again because we don't bring the business down south of the border? Maybe. I'm not suggesting it's absolutely going to happen, but it is a possibility. Now, how much do you weigh that into the decision? Do we go and pay more with an unreliable product from the States where we could get a better deal from someplace else simply because we're afraid of the repercussions from the Trump administration? I'd hate to think that's going to be the deciding factor, but we'd be naive if we didn't at least consider that it had to be somewhere in the conversation about exactly which one we're going to go with here and how Canadian government is going to move forward on this. It's a very sticky situation. It's something that we need to do. It's something that we've made a huge financial commitment toward, and we have to make sure that we do the right thing here, whether it's submarines we're buying, whether it's fighter aircraft that we're buying. It's absolutely necessary that we understand not just the cost, but the possible economic benefit, and just as importantly, the political fallout that could result because of the decision that we make. And how that rolls out and the impact it's going to have on us is something we're certainly going to talk about in future podcasts. Thanks, as always, for being with us on the podcast. Wherever you get your podcasts, of course, if you're on YouTube, don't forget, hit that notification bell and spread the word about this. And we'll also include further reading material on this, too. Maybe we'll put those specs in there so you can get some idea. If you're a submarine aficionado, you can check that out. Hit the subscribe button. We'd like to get your support on this, and not so many of you have done that. We always appreciate that kind of support to help us move forward with the work that we're doing here. Thanks, as always, to Madeline Kelly for the great work putting this one together for us. Till next time, I'm Bill Kelly. Stay in touch and stay informed.
Bill Kelly Podcast brought to you by Wizen's Law, personal injury lawyers. Listen, you didn't choose to get injured, but you can choose the right lawyer. Wizen's Law, 905-522-1102 or wizenslaw.com.